Yes, everybody, welcome. It is that time of year again, 2024 Album of the Year time. Now, before we get into my top 10 list and my honourable mentions, I just want to talk briefly about what this list actually means. Now, I don't put myself forward as some sort of authority in music criticism. I am not Pitchfork, so this top 10 list from me is an excuse, a reason to celebrate and champion great music. Now, I'm not saying that so you can't disagree with me. You can absolutely disagree the shit out of me. But actually, this is just a request from me to you. Down in the comments, I want to know your albums of the year. I want to know what I have missed. And I want to know why these albums, these records, or even these songs mean so much to you, okay? So that is your job down in the comments, because it is not just me reading. This is everybody that is watching the video is also down in the comments reading that shit. And the idea is I want you guys to come away from this video with some music recommendations from me, with some music reminders from me, because we all have those albums that we were connecting with perhaps earlier in the year, then everything happened and we forgot. That's happened as I've been putting my list together, by the way. But also recommendations and reminders from the community. You're going to go down there, you're going to see something that okay, I've not heard of that, or maybe that name rings a bell. You're going to check it out, and chances are you might find something that you absolutely love. So that is your job, guys. Before we get going, please contribute. This is not just the video here, this is everything that's below it, around it as well. Right, guys, before we get into the top 10, then I've got a chunky list, a heavy list of honourable mentions. This video probably could be like a top 20 or even more, but at some point you're like, why am I putting things in order? So let's just go through the honourable mentions. These are the records that have spoken to me this year that didn't quite make that top 10 list. Let's get into it. Let's get proper. These are steamed up. Look, is this an invisible? Does that make my face go invisible? Anyway. Right, these are in no particular order, but this record very nearly did make my top 10. It's Big X The Plug, aka Big X, with Take Care. Absolutely fucking love this record. The old school soul samples, every beat just has a kind of richness. And I can't think of a better word than soul to it. And then Big X himself, the guy is fucking massive, but he just spits that real Texas flame over every single beat. A lot of the beats are produced by a guy called Tony Coles, who I'd not heard before listening to this album. He is fucking superb. And yeah, just front to back, absolute bangers, just make you stand up tall, make you believe in yourself. I assumed the music was going to be something else. Just by the name of the guy, Big X The Plug, I thought it was going to be like slow, mumbly trap music, which I must admit I'm getting quite bored of. But it is not that at all. He's just spitting absolute flames over it. Recommended track, I'll go for the largest, but I mean, take your pick. Honestly, Back on My BS. I mean, there's so many on there. Right, you should definitely check out Bad Cameo from James Blake and Lil Yachty if you haven't already. A strange kind of meshing of worlds. I mean, I am definitely more of a James Blake fan than I am a Lil Yachty fan, although when Yachty is in his like progressive, weird psychedelic bag, which he is often here, it works really well. When I first listened to it, I thought it was going to be something that I span loads this year. I've not gone back to it that many times, but you know, title track is really strong. Opening track, Save the Savior, really strong. And honestly, if you've not really listened to James Blake, but you like an artist like a Frank Ocean, you like somebody who can connect to that kind of deeper resonance with their vocals, with their arrangements, this actually isn't the album to start with, but it's a good place to jump in regardless, because you may be a hip-hop fan if you're watching this, I don't know. But yeah, great record, didn't quite make the top 10, but yeah, fucking good. By the way, reaction to this, if you wanted to see it, is on the Patreon. That's going to be mentioned a lot. So if you wanted to support the channel, you're feeling generous at Christmas time, Patreon, tons of the albums on here that are reacted to on the Patreon, not on the channel, so check it out. Link down in the description. All right, next up, I want to talk about Future Islands and their album People Who Aren't There Anymore. This was recommended to me by one of my good mates. Now, Future Islands are a band I'd not really paid attention to for years. I'm sure so many of you are familiar with that like classic David Letterman performance where the singer is going absolutely nuts, which he seems to on every single live performance. I've not seen them live, I'd like to, but I'd not really thought about them for a while. Sort of gentle, synth-based pop indie music. I liked it, kind of forgot they existed. They released this record and my mate started recommending it to me. And I was like, okay, I'll stick it on. Mate, from the first track, King of Sweden, I was locked in. Give Me the Ghost Back, track 5 on this album. Fuck me. One of the best songs of the year. The record itself is really strong, but it doesn't maintain that level of consistency of the opening track of Give Me a Ghost Back, of Say Goodbye, which is the 4th track. It doesn't quite maintain that all the way through. But at the same time, mate, if you're interested in like synth, if you like, for example, more recent Weekend music with the kind of poppy synths behind it, Future Islands, this album in particular, and a single that came out after that, which is called, let me just bring it up, it's called Glimpse, came out a few months ago. You cannot go wrong. And if you've never seen the live performances, start with the Letterman one. Just type in Letterman Future Islands, you've probably seen it. Start from there. The lead singer is insane. You really can't go wrong. Big recommendation. Sticky in the kind of indie bag then. We've got Vampire Weekend with Only God Was Above Us. This might have crept into the top 10 had I heard it more times. I literally only listened to it for the first time 2 days ago. I've since listened to it a couple more times. Really, really good. I loved Vampire Weekend when they first came out, like 2008 sort of time. I definitely listened to their album Contra, and then, like so much music, I just kind of forgot they existed. I stopped listening to them, and the reason being that happens, that happens all the time in music and life. But the other thing that'll happen to a lot of you who are younger watching, life happened. I had kids. 2011 was when my first kid was born, and you just, like, everything when it comes to stuff like new music, new movies, new anything, just goes on pause. It really does. You're way too busy. You're way too stressed. Had a second kid 4 years later. You only come back out of all of that a bit later. Turns out it was about 2018 for me, which is when I started doing all this YouTube stuff. But that's the reason I stopped listening to Vampire Weekend, I think. But what a time to be reintroduced to them a couple of days ago. Really, really good. It still sounds like them, but a maturing of their sound. I think their lead singer Ezra Koenig's voice has just got better over the years. He's pretty much the exact same age as me, and you can kind of hear that weight and maturity that's come into his voice over the years. He hasn't lost the texture and tone of it. It's gained a bit of gravity. But yeah, songs like Classical, songs like Mary Boone, songs, actually all of it. The biggest stream song is Capricorn, but I don't think that's the best song on the album. The Surfer, really good as well. Big recommendation. Definitely check it out. Yeah, I'm going to go for another recommendation here, an honourable mention. I'm going to go for Yeat. He put out 2 albums this year. Now, Yeat is not somebody that I go and listen to very often. There is it's not that new anymore, but there is a relatively new sound that is starting to dominate the younger generation's music. This kind of burnt, ragey sound. And a lot of it, honestly, is terrible. I mean, lyrically, you're expecting absolutely nothing from it, and you get delivered even less. But a lot of the production seems to be thrown out very, very quickly. Churned out, thrown out there. It's just music that I think a lot of the younger generation love at the time, they're really connecting with at the time, and they'll grow up and not like a lot of it. But Yeat, I think, will stand the test of time. I think he is experimenting with interesting, spacey sounds. Not every song from these albums connect. You could probably mash the two together and get a much better record from the 2 albums. But a track like Breathe, a track like Orchestrate, a lot of his music is used in short form, and it works really well in creating a mood on there as well. It's not music to necessarily sit down and listen to, really connect with on a deep level, like some of the stuff that we're going to be speaking about here, but I think of this style of music, and this is going to be controversial, but I include Playboi Carti in this. I think Yeat's the best. Now, he's obviously influenced by Carti. Carti came first, but for me, Yeat is the best of this new breed of artist in this lane. And to be honest, I don't like many of the others. I think at this point, it's worth mentioning the biggest thing that happened this year in music. And I'm not talking about Brat, although that is another honourable mention. I will speak about that in a second. I'm talking about The Beef. It's obviously not an album, but it is the biggest thing that happened in music, is the biggest thing that happened on the channel. Not Like Us, obviously an absolute phenomenon, but it's worth going back and speaking about some of those other tracks that came before, because Not Like Us is good. It was an amazing moment. It is an unbelievable earworm, but I don't think it is as good a track as Family Matters by Drake, and I don't think it is as good a track as Euphoria by Kendrick Lamar. Meet the Grahams is the terrifying one from Kendrick's, the one that gets under your skin. But you putting that on to listen to very often? I'm not, never. But I went back and listened to Family Matters and Euphoria a few times this week. Both are actually genuinely superb tracks, genuinely superb disses. And Not Like Us was just so strong. It had that kind of commercial element. It's gone on to be a commercial smash. And it had to be the sort of nail in the coffin for The Beef. But the quality bar for the actual tracks in this beef, super high. Drake kind of lost his momentum at the end with The Heart Part 6. Didn't work. But Family Matters, shout out to him. He really, really came strong. Pause. And the whole beef, the whole moment, I actually had COVID that week. and putting all those videos out, because they were literally happening in the middle of the night for me, as you know, if you follow the channel. So I'd be waking up every morning feeling like fucking death, opening my phone and go, oh my God, not again, not again. Let's get the reaction machine on every single time. But looking back, what a moment. Obviously, huge reviews for the channel. Huge for bringing new people onto the Patreon, because we were putting them out a little bit early on the Patreon. Had to be acknowledged here. Obviously not an album, but had to be acknowledged. And I want to give Drake his flowers a little bit. Everybody thinks that I'm a huge Drake hater these days. It's not true. It's not true. I haven't really connected with his recent music in the same way that I do with his older music. And I do think he spectacularly lost this beef. But I do want to give him his flowers for competing well, even though he eventually lost. And we'll see what happens next with him. He's put out a couple of weird songs since. And obviously Kendrick is going from strength to strength. But yeah, acknowledgement for what we saw, what we experienced together in this wild year. I mentioned this before. Let's take the background away for a second, Joe. Like the background, like the album cover. Brat from Charlie XCX is a cultural phenomenon. It is, I think, the only album to get 10 from Mr. Tony Fantano this year. And it is not something that I'm spinning that often, if at all. But every time I hear a track, which is, I mean, they're always being used, whether it's on an advert, whether it's on fucking radio, it always works for me. And I love the fact that I put out my true, pure, raw, uncut reaction to that album. We could have easily edited it so the bits were completely nonplussed, like the first third of the record are cut super short, and when I start to connect with it later on. But we just left it as it is, as an example of what it's actually like to get won over by a project as you listen to it. And that's what happens there if you watch that. Like the first part of that video sucks as a video to watch. It really does. I've gone on to really enjoy the album. Like I say, I don't listen to it too often. It's not one that I'm putting on that regularly. There's other albums that I listen to, and I do realistically spend a lot of time listening to podcasts, a lot of time like listening to YouTube videos with the screen off on YouTube Premium. So there's that as well. But also, the remix album for Brat is fantastic. So shout out, acknowledgement. It didn't make my top 10. Some people would be spewing in the comments right now, undoubtedly. But shout out to Charlie XCX. Really, probably one of the biggest, outside of the beef, cultural moments, iconic moments in music came from her across all genres. So yeah, shout out to her. Okay, let's rattle through a few more. Doechie's Alligator Bites Never Heal. Again, there is, I was going to say, is a reaction on the Patreon. It's actually released on this channel, so you may have seen that, but the uncut's obviously on the Patreon. She's a star, mate. She is an absolute star. When I listened to that album, she was still, I mean, she wasn't underground, but she wasn't where she's suddenly blown up to now with the Jimmy Kimmel, with the Tiny Desk, and with everything that's happening with her right now. But like, presence, ability, skill. And what I love about that album is she had some music that came out before that, which I listened to, and it didn't really work for me. It was just felt like another female artist that was kind of being pushed in a certain way. And she herself acknowledges it on this album. She's like, no, fuck this. I've got to be me. I've got to do the music that I want to do. And that authenticity and that alignment to who she actually is connected fucking immediately, because it's combined with tremendous skill and ability. And because of that, you have a kind of mixed bag of a project. Like, I really love the first half. Second half, not so much, but you can hear it. It's all there. And when that first proper studio, this is technically a mixtape, right? So when that first proper studio album comes out, I think it's going to be an all-timer. TDE's had a massive year. We'll speak about that a little bit in a minute. We've got the Scissor album coming out tomorrow as I record. It's a deluxe, but it has its own name, has its own cover, so we'll see. And obviously you got Kendrick as well. He's not TDE technically anymore, but you know, he did bring everybody out for the show. He's still very much connected with those guys. But Doechii, if you haven't heard it, listen to it. If you haven't watched the reaction, watch it, check it out. And I want to give Eminem some props for releasing The Death of Slim Shady. It didn't make my top 10, but really cool to see him back on form. Really cool to see him back in a lane where, to me, he sounded more comfortable than he has done for a while. He sounds more interested than he has done for a while. I know you can't say anything remotely negative about Eminem because his fans are insane and will come for you. But there are artists that I hold to tremendously high standards, and when they don't hit those standards or anywhere near those standards in projects, then I think it's worth saying. Like, one of the greatest rappers, one of the greatest artists of all time hasn't hit the standards of those early albums since. Now, to be fair, The Death of Slim Shady doesn't hit, you know, the fucking Eminem show, don't get me wrong, but it's a very good project. It has some very good tracks on there. He's rapping at a very high level. He's kind of always rapping at a very high level in terms of actual pure skill and actual pure technical ability. That's never really gone away. But when you can kind of hear the weight of him behind it as well, really comfortable in his skin at his big old age. And just, yeah, a great record for the fans. Good on him. Good on him, man. And the showcase that you can still fucking go. Okay, I told you it was a big honourable mentions. I could have done a top 20, but I decided to just fucking pile them all together. Why not? Yes Lord from No Worries, Anderson .Paak & Knowledge is a sumptuous album. Really, really, really good listen. It's one of those ones that kind of came and went for me. There is a reaction on the Patreon. Again, link down in the description. If you sign up now, it's a fuckload. There's an absolute fuckload to get through that isn't on the channel, so highly recommended. It is just one of those albums that, as good as it is, I've not gone back to it enough. And that's on me. I need to go back and listen to it more. I think that just so much has happened this year that some of these records just kind of disappeared by the wayside. But that happens. That happens every single year. Especially, like back in the day, you'd buy a certain amount of CDs and you'd really fucking spend the time to listen to them because you put hard money down. But here, you can just forget about an album because it comes out, you listen to it on streaming, and then something else happens and it's just kind of gone. Algorithmically, it's not being pushed to you in the way that it might be on a YouTube or something, and it just kind of happens. And then when I'm going through all the stuff that I listened to this year, going through all the stuff that I like this year, I'm like, fuck yeah, this. So that's my cue to listen to it again, and maybe it's your cue as well. Right, we're getting there. This is my final honourable mention. It didn't quite make the top 10, but what a fine record it is, and what a superb, supreme artist that he is. It's Lupe Fiasco's Samurai. Again, reaction on the Patreon, link down in the description. Just a lyrical masterclass. So much about this kind of him as Amy Winehouse concept that's running through it, but Lupe's the kind of guy that you can listen to it casually and it has the flow, it has the beats, it has the production, it's head nodding music for the most part, but obviously when you sit there and fucking listen to it, he is a lyricist on the highest of tiers, the god tier lyricist, an impossible lyricist. And Samurai is a record that on first listen I really liked, on second listen I've liked more and more and more and more and more. I say more and more and more and more and more and more, but I haven't listened to it more and more. We're on like only probably 4 or 5 listens, which isn't enough. It's not enough, unfortunately. But if you don't like Lupe, it's not as heavy as something like a Drogas Wave. It's a much easier, simpler, more digestible listen than a Drogas Wave. So definitely get on it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. That is the honourable mentions done, I think. I'm looking down at my list here. I don't think I've missed anything. If I have... Oh, Not Loose. The Not Loose record. Heavy as shit. I want to do more heavy music in 2025. Let me know what else I've missed in 2024. Yeah, the Not Loose record. They are so heavy. It was hilarious seeing them on, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel, upsetting people. Great. That's what you want. Pure energy, raw. They're so heavy. They're so fucking heavy. They're very, very much my cup of tea. So yeah, recommend some heavy shit. That's the honourable mentions done, guys. We're into the top 10 now. That took a hell of a lot longer than I thought it was going to, but we're in no rush here. We're in absolutely no... We're celebrating a great year of music. That's what this is all about. Right. Top 10 time. Okay then, number 10, and it is Metro Boomin, Future, We Don't Trust You. The album that started it all, really. My reaction to Like That is legendary because I did not know that Kendrick Lamar was even on that track, and I definitely didn't know what he was going to say. I love the fact that exists because I know some people who did the reaction, they'd heard on socials or whatever that he was on there. They kind of heard. I was lucky enough that I was completely fucking fresh. They didn't have the feature names on the album when it came out. They do now, looking on DSPs. I love it when they do that. Obviously, Like That is the one that kicked everything off. And because of that, the album kind of gets overshadowed a little bit. But I actually went back and listened to it a few times recently. Cinderella, with Travis Scott on there, was one of my most listened to songs of the early part of the year. Definitely. You've got Young Metro with The Weeknd. Even the opening track is fantastic. You've got Everyday Hustle with Rick Ross and Future sounding very different on that one. It's a really, really strong album. Metro Boomin in a completely different lane to almost any other producer these days. He is very much an artist now. A lot of controversy that's been recent about him, around everything, everybody to do with all this shit. Future's decided, no, I have a problem with Drake. I mean, that guy, honestly, you gotta love him because the guy just seemingly has zero morals or whatsoever. But, it is, talking of cultural iconic moments. There's been plenty this year, whether we're talking about Charlie XCX, whether we're talking about obvious stuff like Not Like Us. Without this album, the world is looking very different right now. Without this album, do we even have GNX? Without this album, do we have Kendrick Lamar playing the Super Bowl? Without this album, he has another album and then another album. Future, just on his own. I mean, who knows? Without this album, do we have the Drake lawsuits against Universal? I mean, this is a serious moment in time, but it's also a really fucking good record. Number 9, it is Clairo with the album Charm. Now, this one could potentially go higher on the list over time, but I've not listened to it enough because, again, like a few of these, I did an album of the year season on Patreon of stuff that I'd missed out that you guys on Patreon recommended. I tried to get as many done as I could. Oh, another honourable mention and an album reaction that died. It died. The album reaction fucking died. I recorded the whole thing and my computer corrupted, killed the video and the audio. Is the Mac Homie Rich Ass Haitian. That's really fucking good. Really good album. Mac Homie is amazing. That would be in my honourable mentions. It may have even made it into the top 10. The reaction doesn't exist. It fucking died 55 minutes into the reaction. But one that didn't die was Clairo's Charm. Another one from my album of the year season. Honestly, at first, when I first started listening to it, I was like, oh wow, she sounds a bit like Elliott Smith. And, you know, she has similar picking patterns. She's using the layered vocals that I love from Elliott's work. Obviously, if you know me, Elliott Smith, my all-time favourite artist. And so unsurprisingly, I was getting into it. But then there's a bunch of other sounds in there as we go through the album. Sounds from the 60s, sounds from the 70s, a lot of sounds from the 90s. Sounds like, at times it's music that could be taken from like a Dawson's Creek soundtrack. At times it has elements of disco and old soul and Motown in there. Every song is gorgeous. Her voice is absolutely beautiful, but her songwriting and structure and use of all these different instruments and use of all of these different styles and ideas from throughout the years really is something special indeed. And yeah, it's an album that I'm probably going to listen to. I mean, I say I'm going to listen to it forever. Like I said, the tendency to forget albums in this current modern day culture of listening is a real problem, but I have every intention to not forget about this one, to listen to it a lot. And also, if the appetite is there for you guys to go back and listen to her previous music as well. And it actually got me listening to Elliott again, who I've not listened to much this year, and connecting deeply with some of his songs in a way that I hadn't done before, like even deeper, like going to a fourth meaning of Between the Bars that, I'm not going to lie, it had me in bits on the sofa a few nights ago, just listening there on my own. Something broke through, the walls were broken down. It was a very cathartic moment for me. And that wouldn't have happened. Talk about the consequences of things in the previous conversation about Metro, right? That moment wouldn't have happened for me had I not listened to Charm and I had not been recommended Charm by you guys on the Patreon. So yeah, if you want to watch that reaction, again, it is on the Patreon. Link down in the description to that one. It's a special one, definitely. And yeah, an artist that I'm like, wow, I'd heard her name before a bunch. Maybe I'd heard her as a feature or something, or maybe I'd heard a song. I don't think so, but I love it when this happens. There is something about music sitting with people for a certain amount of time that it's not always necessary to be there day and date, be on top of everything, be that guy that's there for every album release and know everything at all times. Because sometimes when these albums sit for weeks and months with you guys, with people, they take on their own different kind of energy. And a couple of things happen. One, if it's recommended enough from people that I trust with their musical taste and who know mine enough to recommend stuff for me that they think that I'm going to like, hey, chances are I'm going to like it, which is great. But also these songs, they have a different energy when they've been listened to millions of times by people and fans around the world. And that's something that you just tap into. Like, you can't listen to, let's say, oh, While My Guitar Gently Weeps is a song that just came to me in that moment. Old, special, deeply emotional. You can't listen to that just objectively as if it's just a piece of music that was recorded today. No, it brings with it the energy, as I keep saying, it's this phrase that I keep using, the energy of a million ghosts. And it's actually more like a billion for a song like that. And what that means is just the essence, the energy that surrounds it, of all of these people have listened to it, connected with it, recommended it, its soundtrack, certain moments in their life. And I feel that with some of these records that I've not listened to throughout the year, but you've recommended. They've started to get those ghosts in around them. And that is actually the energy of so many of the videos earlier on in this journey on this channel, whether it's Frank, whether it's Abel, whether it's Mac, whoever it is, because I wasn't doing it day and date. There's a different energy for day and date as well. It's a special, it's like a crackle. It's like a bubbling up crackle when you do it day and date, like the Kendrick, like the Beef, all this sort of stuff. So that's different and that's important too. But doing the older stuff, even if it's only a few weeks or months old and it's starting to live with people, you tap into it. You really do. Well, I do anyway. And that, it gives it something. But anyway, Clairo Charm, number 9. Very, very good. Now, number 8 is an album that has absolutely blown my fucking socks off. And I wish I listened to it sooner because it would definitely be higher on the list. It is Geordie Greep with the new sound. Once again, I'm sounding like a broken record here, but link down in the description to the Patreon if you want to watch the reaction to this one. Highly recommended. The album's insane. The album's absolutely insane. I mean, obviously, coming from Black Midi, still working with some of the artists from Black Midi, I was expecting extreme instrumentation, crazy vocals, crazy lyrics. I was expecting more chaos. And it's definitely chaotic, but it's much more honed in than Black Midi. It is much more sonically, thematically similar throughout. This like kind of big band, croony, bossa nova, samba sound combined with the jazz fusion, post-rock, post-punkness. His voice, as he's only 25 now, but like the maturing of his voice, his lungs are expanding, he has much more power. Serious, true crooning. It is fucking bizarre. It's insane. It's absolutely out there. Some of the lyrics are like, you can't play this in front of the kids, my God. Can't play this in polite company, my God. But I just sat there just absolutely mind blown listening to this album and just thinking, how are these songs going to sound to me in 6 months when I've become familiar with the time signature changes, familiar with the runs and the crazy extra moments that come in. Already I'd heard the song Holy Holy. I think by the time I listened to the album, it was the 3rd time I listened to Holy Holy. So I was familiar enough with the powerful chorus in that song. And even that started to take on a different life. I feel like that's going to be every song is going to have a different life the more I listen to it. Unbelievable shit, to be honest. Truly, like an absolute virtuoso musician, artist. And I just sat there like, how does he come up with this? Like, where does this come from in the universe to create music like this, especially in your mid-20s? Not that age should really matter. And virtuoso is virtuoso, but like what? Where does this level of creativity, where does it come from? There's a 12-minute song on here that is just absolutely fucking insane. It's not for everybody, absolutely not, but I would recommend it still to anybody just to experience it, just to try and lock in. Can you get onto this frequency that he's inviting you to? Do you have a choice if you start listening to it? I'm not even sure if you do. You've got no choice but to at least pay attention. Number 7, it is Mr. Frederick Gibbs, the Cane Train himself. Freddie Gibbs, You Only Die Once. It's just a masterclass. I wrote this in my reaction, which is on the channel. It's just a masterclass in rap skill. I can't put it any better than that. I don't think it is on the level of a Pinata, the level of an Alfredo, the level of a Bandana, but nevertheless, it ain't far off. Seemingly, he put a lot of this together like while on set, while working on one of his movies. I mean, if you know me, in terms of pure skill set, in terms of pure appeal, one of my favorite rappers, if not my favorite, just in terms of pure, just like fucking technical appeal, humor, punchlines, bars, everything that I look for, he just delivers in spades. And from front to back of this album, there's not a bad moment on here. There's nothing to pick holes in. There's nothing I'd question. This is one of my favorite artists, one of my favorite rappers, doing what he does better than almost anybody else in the world. Is it the rap album of the year? No, it's not. It is not the rap album of the year. There are some that are above it, which we'll speak about shortly. But is it a masterclass in skill and craft from a master of his craft? You're damn fucking right. You're damn fucking right. Pick your favorite. Pick your favorite. Brick Fee's probably my favorite off the top of my head, but you know, cause you can't go wrong with any of it, really. He's just that fucking guy. Okay, number 6. This is an album that I imagine quite a few of you have higher up and maybe even number 1. It is Tyler, the Creator. Chromacopia, just fantastic work. His level of consistency throughout his career is crazy. And once again, He delivers with a deeply creative, smart, super listenable, super enjoyable project. There is some depth here lyrically in terms of subject matter, which I admire and appreciate. That being said, as a 42-year-old man, it does sound like somebody who is discovering life and adulthood honestly a little bit later than I'd expect. That's just me being real. Like, some of his revelations is something that I'd expect from someone in their early to mid-20s, but he has not walked the path or lived the life of a normal person. He has been a very famous artist for a long fucking time, so I can't expect him to be having the kind of revelations that maybe other people have when they're younger at the same age. That is a personal thing for me. If you are in your 20s listening to this, you may be experiencing these things at the same time as Tyler. And so a lot of the stuff that he speaks about on this album may hit deeper for you. That being said, musically, it is superb throughout. You have tracks like Darling I, tracks like I Killed You, tracks like, I mean, there's so many good ones. Balloon with Doechii. I mentioned Doechii. Yeah, I did mention Doechii. There are so many strong tracks on here, like St. Chroma with Daniel Caesar at the beginning, which so many people thought was Frank, and some people still think Frank's on there. There's stuff like Sticky, which is, it can go either way, that track. I fucking love it. It's an absolute fucking triumph for the track. That's got 134 million streams. That must have taken off somewhere. Maybe it's a TikTok trend or something that I've not seen. I mean, shout out to Tyler for massive artistic success and massive commercial success. We're seeing that with a few of the world's great rappers this year, and any thoughts that hip hop is dying or hip hop is dead are misguided and misfounded, definitely. And an album like Chromacopia only serves to prove that we're all right. Everything's gonna be all right. Great stuff. Number 5 then, it's the boy Peggy, JPEG Mafia. I lay down my life for you. Yes sir, yes fucking sir. Heavy dude. Sin Miedo, what a track. Fucking vulgar display of power, literally the name of a Pantera album. Really, really, really strong production, really strong rapping, a tremendous experience from JPEG Mafia, and just, you know, his use of guitar and fucking kind of heavier sounds. Just like, the guy's so fucking good. Do you know what it is about JPEG Mafia? He's so fucking good that you almost like forget about it because you take it for granted. And it's so unfair. Do you know when people are so good, you take them for granted? Oh yeah, it's Peggy, you know, it's just Peggy being Peggy. It's like, just wait a minute. Wait a fucking minute. This guy's producing, engineering, fucking mixing, doing everything. To be fair, Tyler was on the previous album as well. But he's doing all of this shit, rapping, writing it, operating, bringing in like crazy samples, all of these deep cut references if you're a fucking nerd like I am, like so many of us are. And it's easy to take that shit for granted because he's been doing it at such a high level for so long that you're like, oh yeah, it's Peggy, that's what he does. But hold up. An artist who does it all like this, especially in rap, where, you know, we have great rappers, but they have other musicians make the music for them so often. When somebody does it all like Peggy, they should be held to a certain stat. They should be held up. It really should. That should be always spoken about. And I should have mentioned it with Tyler as well. When the rapper does it all themselves, I'm not saying they have to, I'm not saying that they should. Plenty of rappers, most rappers rap and the producer makes the beats and music, and that's how it works, and that's fine. But when they do it all themselves and it is to this level, that should be celebrated. Do you know what? After this is finished and I've finished recording, this is the album I'm going to listen to straight away because it's one that I've not spent enough time with this year. I know it's my number 5. I've listened to it a bunch. I've not listened to it enough recently. And I'm really in the mood for it because I've got some energy now. I'm fired up speaking. I'm in the mood for it, mate. I'm in the mood for it. Shout out to Peggy. Shout out to JPEG Mafia. I lay down my life for you. Fucking banging record. Okay, we're getting to the business end now, mate. We're getting into the fucking business end of proceedings. This is an album that I'm worried that so many people may have forgotten about because so much has happened this year musically. And because of that, hopefully this is a reminder to go and put it back on again and connect with it again because it's special, man. It's Schoolboy Q, Blue Lips. It's just fucking superb. I spoke about TDE having a big year, and this was the start of it. It's just superb from front to back. High level rapping, high level production, a lot of that West Coast energy that has since permeated the year and probably become like the main sound in rap again this year. Didn't even mention Vince's album. in the honourable mentions. Just remembered it then, so sorry about that. That wouldn't have made my top 10, but worth mentioning Dark Times. Obviously Kendrick. Obviously Doechii. Snoop and Dre just dropped an album that I've not listened to yet. That West Coast sound coming back in a big way. That is there throughout this album. There's some trap sounds throughout this album. There are beautiful tracks like Blue Sides, which is like an ode to Mac, on there as well. And it's just one of those albums that every single track, there's not a filler track on there. It is a fucking body of work that demands to be taken seriously from an artist who, quite honestly, has never really let himself down. He's never really dropped the ball. He's never really let that bar drop below a certain level, but this is him, and he's, I think he's the same age as me, Q. I think so. He's a fucking dad, he's a different guy to the guy that he used to be back in the day, which is a very serious individual, and now, he's a fucking pretty laid back dad, but all that stuff, that he's still that guy though, do you know what I mean? He's still a fucking serious dude, and all of his different parts of his personality, all the different parts of his psyche, all of his different musical tastes are on display in this fucking cracker of a record, an absolute banger of a record. And one, like I said, I'm worried because so much has happened this year. Like, try and remember what happened musically before Like That dropped, before the fucking beef happened, like before May. There was a 21 Savage album, remember that? That was nearly a year ago. Remember that? I mean, some of you will, because some of you are so locked in the whole time. But Q's album came out early in the year, and so many people would have forgotten about it, and you shouldn't. So I highly recommend, if you liked it, go and reconnect with it. If you haven't listened to it, but you like rap, sort it out, mate. Sort it out. Come on. It's not quite the rap album of the year. It had it on lock for me for a long time, but things have changed. His mate got involved. No spoilers. His mate did get involved in proceedings, but it is still close. It is damn close to me. And literally, it's the last thing that I listened to before recording today. I listened to a bunch of tracks from it, and it's just so good. I listened to it locked in, and then Nat started talking to me about something, and I listened to it like, as you do, and you're chatting, but it's still there in the back. This is how you listen to music when you're just doing shit, but not physically like that, but like when you're doing other shit. Work for both beautifully. Locked in, I was fucking locked in. And doing other shit, talking, it was working for me as like that semi-background music type of thing. Mate. Q, I love the guy. I really do. Like the energy of the dude as well. All of that sort of shit matters to me. Really does. Like, I can handle an artist who's a prick. I can, because some are super up their own arse. Like, it's one of the reasons I haven't really ever wanted to get into the interviewing artist space, because like some of them are like, oh mate, I just don't want to talk to you, mate. Like, I just want to listen. I listen to your music, but I don't want to talk to you. Jesus. Q is not like that at all. Every time I hear him speak, he's always got love for other people as well. His team, his people. There's a whole song about Mac on here. I'm fired up about this record. This is actually one of the records I'm most passionate about this year, because I believe that people have forgotten about it. And that is just because of the nature of how it goes. So much has happened this year. So much music is released. We're so much in like the constant cycle of fucking social media and all happening right now. And an album that literally only came out 10 months ago is kind of forgotten and not spoken about. Now, you guys who are replying to my threads on the channel or on X about your albums of the year, I keep seeing it pop up. So shout out to you lot. But that happens. There will be a bunch of you watching this video be like, fuck, I forgot about that. This is your call to listen to it again. Now we're getting serious. Top 3 time. In my reaction to this, the title literally says Album of the Year. However, not quite. Magdalena Bay, Imaginal Disc. Something that I'd heard recommended a few times. I'd heard people speaking about this band. I'd seen the front cover of the album. I was like, that doesn't look like anything I want to listen to. Then you guys on Patreon, man. You always bring in the thunder. You guys on Patreon recommended this above something else. Above Logic, actually. Also, shout out to Logic. He did a decent project this year with Ultra 85. I assumed that Logic was going to be the one that won. And it wasn't. It was this. And I listened to it in the first track. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I mean, all right. And then you can see it. Just watch the video. You can see the moment where things change. It's not that I wasn't enjoying it at the beginning. I was like, okay, yeah, this is kind of cool. I was like, wow. It's Death and Romance. That's the track where things change for me on this album. Fucking hell. You're talking about, sometimes you listen to something, you're like, instant classic. Like, we're going to listen to this song forever. That's what happened there. Instant classic. Death and Romance. Feels like a song that's been around for 20 years. And then it's just that again and again and again and again. You've got the psychedelic sounds, the 70s sounds, the 80s sounds, the 90s sounds, the 2000s sounds, everything mashed together. like it's been run through a fucking CD-ROM drive and yanked back out while the motor's going like that. Obviously, she has a CD and a fucking head in the album cover. It is beautiful. It is sumptuous. It is challenging. It's also super easy to listen to. Oh man, it was such a lock for me for album of the year for ages, and then suddenly it wasn't. But I mean, when we're getting into this point, when you're getting into the top 3, top 4 point, like whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's like whatever. There isn't one this year that's like head and shoulders for me above everything else. These top 4, interchangeable, mate. They're albums that I'm fired up to talk about. They're albums that I'm so happy that I listen to. I've been doing this for a long time now. If you include Rock Reacts, it's since March 2018 and what we December 2024. So that's 6 3/4 years of doing this. And unsurprisingly, like with any, this is a job for me now, and it's an amazing job, and I'm so grateful to be able to do it. But like any job, there are moments where you're like, oh, I just don't really want to do this today, you know? And there was a period kind of in between the beef finishing and then me listening to this album where I was losing a little bit of passion. And that's just me being real with you. I was losing a bit of passion for it. And you can tell I've been starting other projects this year, and that's normal, and I'm always going to do that. But this was the album that made me remember what it is that makes reaction videos special, that hopefully makes my channel and my journey special as well for people. I mean, so many of you guys say it, so I'm just going to be fucking unmodest about it for a minute. It is that moment where you connect as a listener and as a reactor, video maker, whatever, with something that speaks to you and moves you on that deep level. And that's honestly what we doing this are hunting for the whole time. We're hunting for. And actually, if you think about it, that's what music fans are hunting for. Truly. And that is actually the mantra going forward for this channel. I want to connect with that music that makes me feel, that moves me. And you cannot guarantee, I'll never know. When it comes to new releases, you're never going to know. You're hoping. But when you guys are recommending stuff that's been there for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, maybe even longer, because we're going to be doing some true classics as well going forward that have been around for years, decades even. You're upping the odds. That's what I'm saying. You're upping the odds of it being something that can do that. And when that happens, and honestly, it's happened a bunch since then because I've been very conscious about doing this. But this was the one that started it off. I listened to it a bunch when I did the album reaction. Then a bunch of stuff happened, a bunch more albums happened. Work happened, life happened. But I made a conscious effort to put this back on a couple of weeks ago, and I span it while doing the washing up. I span it again. I listened to Death and Romance a bunch of times, and I'm like, Jesus, dude, this album is just fucking magic. Magic Bay, mate. If you've not listened to it, this is a recommendation. If nothing else, this is a recommendation. This is a championing of this band, a championing of this group, a championing of this album. If it wasn't for a couple of others, this would be album of the year for me. So in many ways, it still is. There was a time where it was album of the year. In many ways, it still is. Imaginal Disc. Wonderful. All right. Number 2, remember, this is a celebration. This is a celebration of music. This is unscripted. I don't even have bullet notes this year. Just going off the dome. Really just want to talk my shit about this music. You know, it's Kendrick Lamar's GNX. It's number 2. Damn. It's so good. It's so good. How cool was it that we got a teaser? Obviously, we had the beef, then we got Watch the Party Die. And we're like, okay, there's going to be a new album coming. Then we got a Super Bowl announcement, and then we knew there was a new album coming at some point, and then people on his team kept talking about it. People who are connected with him kept talking about it. Then we had the teaser, just called GNX. I did a reaction to it. That reaction doesn't exist. It's never been anywhere. Because while that was being edited, the motherfucker dropped the whole project Friday evening for me. And do you know what's crazy? If it had been the following Friday evening, I would have been in London going to a concert. I went to go and see Idols, who also had an album this year that's decent. And do you know what? If it had come out then when I was on the train, or by that point I would have been in London seeing my friend. Oh, mate, I wouldn't have been able to enjoy the concert. I wouldn't have been able to do anything. I'd have been stressed, dude. I'd have been so stressed because I would have I need to get this fucking done. But thankfully it came out the week before and we got it done and we got it up that evening. But man, what an album. You can see the reaction to it. Obviously it is on the channel. Whacked Out Murals. Terrifying. Squabble Up. Bouncing. Luther. Sumptuous. Man at the Garden. Damn. Reincarnated. Fell off my goddamn chair. Fell off my chair. Gloria. Dude, The Heart Part 6. Listen, I don't love the title track GNX. But apart from that, just fucking fire. Moments of introspection and deep lyricism where he's moving between characters and bringing in double and triple entendres and deep religious overtones and undertones, and other moments where he's like, fuck it, we move, we're squabbling up, we're bouncing, we're dancing, we're moving, we're creating energy, we're putting that out into the world, and you can almost feel the tectonic plate shift. I mean, shit, there was a earthquake in California recently. I hope people are okay. But I'm not saying Kendrick caused it, but Jesus, the tectonic shifts that he has caused this year in culture, it's a fucking listenable album. It's a more listenable album to me than Mr. Morale. I think it's a better album than Mr. Morale. Mr. Morale goes some places, man. But for me, Mr. Morale's more upbeat numbers, they're fine, but they're kind of weird. They're too Baby Keemish for me. Whereas this feels like, this is West Coast modern Kendrick. This is just fucking fire. Like, it has the weirdness that you need from Kendrick. Like, Squabble Up is a weird track. Fucking, what's the name of the mustard? I just call it Mustard. I forgot the name of the fucking track. TV Off, that's the name of the track. I just call it Mustard. TV Off, again, a weird track. The Mustard memes, legendary shit. There was rumours and talk that there was going to be another album. In fact, he released a very old song from the Section 80 recording times, but with the G and X as the kind of cover art on YouTube just yesterday. So is there going to be more before the year's end? I hope so. The tracks with SZA, amazing. SZA has a project out tomorrow, a deluxe. Will Kendrick be on that? I mean, I don't know. But the year belongs to Kendrick Lamar. There's no doubt about it. There was a point he got like Rapper of the Year or Artist of the Year in some magazine and people were complaining, and then he dropped this album. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. The guy owned 2024 in a way that we've not seen perhaps ever, but certainly in a long time. And to see an artist who was a massive artist, don't get me wrong, like number one albums, big records, huge artists, huge sold out tours, but he's gone to stratospheric levels now. Like my kid who's 13 listens 2 tracks from this album and it's like, this isn't 13-year-olds music. Do you know what I mean? It isn't. But he's got a way of connecting that is just working for everybody. And he's not lost an essence of who he is, GNX. In many ways, this is the album of the year. It cannot not be, from a cultural, from a fucking iconic, from an industry, from a life point of view, and from a musical point of view. This is, in many ways, it kind of is the album of the year, but this is a personal list. And as such, my album of the year, my number one, it can be nothing other than The Cure with Songs of a Lost World. Now, perhaps my biggest regret, I don't really do regrets, but a big regret of mine, or at least a lament of 2024, is that I don't have a first reaction to this album. Let me tell you the story of how it happened. I saw a lot of reviews popping up for The Cure's new album, first album in years and years and years. And it was getting seriously high scores, 10s, 9.5s. I was like, that's unusual. Well, you know, I like Pictures of You. I grew up with Boys Don't Cry and Friday I'm in Love. I've got some admin to do. I had to do some financial admin. Like my nightmare. Putting together bank statements and expenses and shit. And I was like, okay, I'll stick this on in the background, see what it's like. It's like, opening song's 7 minutes long, then another one like 6 minutes. Okay. Within 2 minutes of the first song, I was like, this is way more epic than I was expecting it to be. And way more like full of life than I was expecting it to be. The track's called Alone. It's a very epic intro. And then the second track, And Nothing Is Forever. I stopped what I was doing and I slumped back in this chair and I let the music wash over me. And I continued to let that happen. I did eventually, during it, go back to the tedious and tiresome financial admin. I was like, this is really good. I was like, this is really good, isn't it? Like, because, you know, The Cure has been a distant soundtrack to my whole life. They're a band that are from a town not 15, 20 minutes from the town where I come from Brighton. They're not from Brighton. They're from Crawley, which is, yeah, like I say, 15, 20 minutes away. And when I was a kid, they were a band that grown-ups listened to. They weren't necessarily a band that were played much in my house that I remember, but they're a band that grown-ups listened to. They were on TV. They were on the radio. And I remember seeing the singer with his he still looks like it now, his crazy hair and his makeup, and being like, that's weird. As I got a bit older, into my teens and early 20s, I started to appreciate and enjoy some of their songs. I used to go to an indie disco in my early 20s, and they'd always play Friday I'm in Love, because we go there on a Friday, And the DJ was probably now the similar age to Robert Smith, thinking about it. He was obviously older than all of, probably in his 40s, the DJ. And he would play some Cure songs. And I grew to like a lot of them. But they were never a band that I sat and listened to albums. I never listened to a Cure album, in fact, until this. And it was only some strange compulsion that drew me towards it. And yet now, having listened to it over and over and over again, had an extremely powerful walk. I was in London at the beginning of last month for a friend's birthday, and I came up early and had some lunch in Chinatown. And then I was staying over the night, and I was meeting him the friend's birthday party, which was near Waterloo, and I was staying near there. So I decided to walk from Chinatown to where I was staying near Westminster. It's about a 35-minute walk, and it was a cold but bright day in London. And cold but bright wintry days in England are beautiful. In fact, I was going to say it's happening. One's happening right now. It's not. It's now raining. But that's what was happening. And I walked, and that walk is beautiful because you walk down past the river at points, you walk past the Houses of Parliament, you walk past the entirety of modern British culture. And I listened to this album during this, and it connected with me on a level that I can't even explain. This is an album about life in its entirety. This is an album from an artist and a group who are aging. They're in their 60s. This is music from a man who's lost both his parents and brother very recently. The song And Nothing Is Forever is about that. A fragile thing. I can never say goodbye. These are tragic songs about the true, I can't think of a different word, the true tragedy of life. Yet there is a hope and beauty and sonic sense of triumph. The triumph and spirit of life runs through this album, as heartbreaking and melancholy at times as it is. This is about the triumph of the human spirit as the flame begins to flicker out. It is a masterpiece. The fact that Robert Smith still has the voice that he does at his age is incredible. And you know what? If you've not listened to this, but you like music that moves you, I can almost guarantee that you'll love it, even if you've never listened to this band before. But there is a way that you could experience this album for the first time in a really special way. The Cure, for album release, did a live event at the Troxy in London where they played this album front to back. And then they decided to go on and play basically two more hours. This is an hour. 2 more hours of their greatest hits. Basically entire back catalogue of note. 3 hours straight. But the first hour is this album. And it's so amazingly well played. His voice is record perfect. The emotion, the crowd are just sat there silent. It's not like a bunch of people on their phones, like a Coachella crowd. This is a respectful crowd who are there to experience that moment. That's not saying some people are on their phones a little bit, but do you know what I mean? And that could be an amazing way to experience this record for the first time. But another way could just be to put it on good headphones and shut off the world and listen to it. Or it could just be to stick it on while you're doing something else like you would do with any other album. But regardless, for me, this album spoke to me on such a deep level and continues to speak to me on such a deep level as I am getting older. I am not at that age yet, but as you get to 40, as you get to middle age, as I'm in, things start to change in terms of not only your physical energy and your things hurting and all that sort of shit that people talk about, but the finality and finite nature of existence is very much a reality. It's there, it's in the distance, man. I say to myself and out loud sometimes, we all have an uncertain amount of days left on this earth. But when you're young, you don't think that you're invincible when you're young. But I have between 0 and 40 plus years left on this earth. I don't know. I have between 0 days and 40, people my age die. They do. And people my age live another 40 plus years. They do as well. And maybe people my age live another 50 plus years. But who knows? And to hear an album about that, but also about the triumph of spirit, the triumph of human spirit, an album of true hope and beauty about the wonder and essence that is life and love and existence. Oh my fucking God. There could be no other album but this. This is the #1 album of the year. This video is way longer than I was expecting it to be. I thought I'd get this, including the honourable mentions, done in 20 minutes. But if you have watched the whole thing to the end, I have a job for you. Please let me know in the comments something that has spoken to you musically, hopefully, and share in a way that I have. Open up. Take this as an opportunity to open up and share stuff with you. It's scary to do that, but you'll be amazed how many people connect with it. And if you take nothing else away from my videos, it's that the more that you can not close yourself away, not hide yourself away, the more that you can be the you that you're supposed to be and share that with the world truly, the more that will come back to you. These are my top 10 albums of 2024. And this is me this is John, dude. 2025 is going to be something different indeed. And I'm excited about it. But hopefully we'll get music that speaks to us as much as some of this stuff has spoken to me this year. Thank you so much for the incredible support. If you really did want to show your support, like I said, link down in the description to Patreon. You could sign up for a month just for this month and get through so much content. But if you do want to support, and you can, we'd really appreciate having you over there. It's a very special community and it does drive what we do. If you made it this far and you're not subscribed, by the way, do that. Drop a like on the video. And guys, have a wonderful Christmas if you're watching this beforehand. A wonderful holiday, however you celebrate. And here's to 2025. We're coming through strong, but we're coming through open. I will see you soon. Peace and love.